Ladies and gentlemen, there is a unique kind of power in a woman who walks alone, not because she wants to, but because life has taught her how to survive without a crowd behind her. A woman with no friends is not a woman without worth, she is a woman in training. She is learning who she is without the world telling her who to be. When you look around and realize no one is standing with you, it can feel like a punishment, but sometimes it's protection. Sometimes the path you're walking is so high, not everyone is meant to climb with you. Sometimes your growth makes others uncomfortable. Sometimes your purpose is too big for small circles. Isolation is not rejection, it is preparation. A woman with no friends learns something most people never do. She learns how to be her own cheerleader. She learns how to wipe her own tears. She learns how to clap for herself when nobody else is clapping. And that builds a strength no one can take away, because when the crowd disappears, your character appears when the room goes silent. Your confidence speaks when the support stops. Your self-belief grows louder. There were people who left because they didn't want to watch you rise. People who stayed quiet because they couldn't celebrate you without questioning themselves. People who couldn't handle the size of your dreams, so they backed away. Let them go. You're not losing anything. You're being aligned with something greater. One day, they will see the woman who refused to break, the woman who kept going when her heart was tired, the woman who built herself from the ground up. They will see your strength, and they will remember the moment they chose not to stand beside you. But you won't hold bitterness, because you'll understand. Their absence was the blessing. Their silence was the push. Their eggs, it was the turning point. So keep walking, even if it's slow, even if it's quiet, even if the only footsteps you hear are your own, because the strongest version of you is rising in this season of solitude. You are learning independence. You are discovering resilience. You are becoming the woman who does not just survive alone, she succeeds alone. You don't need a crowd to validate your greatness. You don't need a group to confirm your purpose. You don't need company to walk into destiny. Stand tall, stay focused, move forward with fire in your eyes, because a woman with no friends today will be a woman everyone respects tomorrow. Solitude builds unshakable strength because it forces you to rely on the one person who will never leave you, yourself. When you are surrounded by others, it is easy to borrow their confidence, absorb their encouragement, and take strength from their support. But when the room empties and the noise fades, you meet a version of yourself you didn't know existed. That is where growth begins. In the silence, you start to discover your true voice, not the one shaped by others' expectations, but the one rooted in your own identity. You learn what you want, what you deserve, and what you refuse to tolerate. Solitude becomes the space where clarity is born. You start to separate what is temporary from what is true. You learn to stand without leaning, speak without waiting for approval, and breathe without worrying who's watching. Being alone teaches you resilience. When there is no one to catch you, you figure out how to land safely. When there is no one cheering for you, you learn how to clap for yourself. When there is no one guiding your steps, you learn how to trust your own judgment. Every challenge you face alone strengthens you in a way companionship never could. You discover how capable you truly are when you become the hero of your own story instead of depending on someone else to save you. And that kind of capability cannot be shaken easily. It becomes part of your foundation, a foundation built from storms you survived without a hand to hold. In solitude, you are confronted with the truth of who you are. There is no mask to perform for the crowd. There is no pretending needed to fit in. You begin to look inward instead of outward. You start to heal wounds you ignored while trying to keep up with others. You start to confront insecurities that were quieted by distraction. You start to notice dreams that were buried beneath conversations designed to keep you small. The journey inward is not always comfortable, but it is necessary. It strips away illusions and reveals strength that was always there hidden under the noise of companionship. A woman who learns to thrive alone becomes unstoppable because she is no longer driven by fear of abandonment. She doesn't cling to people who don't respect her. She doesn't beg for attention or chase validation from those who withhold it. She understands that peace is better than a crowded environment full of fake support. She understands that having no one is better than having the wrong ones. She chooses quality over company. She chooses self-respect over fitting in, and that choice alone shifts everything. Solitude transforms her from someone who needs a group to someone a group needs. The world often underestimates a woman who walks alone. They assume she is weak, unwanted, or incomplete. But what they fail to see is the growth happening quietly within her. They don't realize that while others are staying comfortable in the company of many, she is learning to build her own foundation. She is learning to become the type of woman who can walk into any room with presence, power, and direction. She won't ask for permission to be great. She will already know she is. A woman who has built strength in solitude doesn't crumble under pressure because pressure is where she was shaped. Challenges don't break her because challenges are the very thing that taught her how to rise. And one day, the same people who overlooked her will wonder how she became so strong. They will see her confidence and assume it came easy, but she will know the truth that every ounce of strength was earned in the quiet moments when she had to push herself forward. She will look back at the times she felt alone and realize those were the seasons that created her power. Solitude did not weaken her, solitude upgraded her. It taught her how to walk without being led, how to believe without being reassured, how to grow without being noticed. She became her own source of motivation, her own voice of encouragement, her own safe place. And when a woman reaches that level of self-reliance, there is no force on earth that can break her. When a woman has no friends, she learns the art of trusting her inner compass in a world full of opinions trying to shape her. She becomes familiar with her instincts, listening closely to the whispers inside that tell her what is right for her, even when no one else understands the path she's taking. Without a chorus of voices guiding her, she begins to rely on her own wisdom. She learns to distinguish fear from intuition, doubt from truth, and hesitation from misalignment. In the absence of company, she sharpens her discernment because every choice she makes becomes a testament to her independence. She no longer follows the crowd. She creates her own lane, and that kind of self-guided direction builds a confidence no approval can match. Being without friends means there are no shortcuts to decision-making. No one is there to influence her or persuade her to settle for less than she deserves. She has to choose for herself, and that responsibility molds her into someone who is accountable, precise, and thoughtful. She becomes intentional with the steps she takes. She evaluates risks, weighs consequences, and considers outcomes with a depth that only someone who thinks for herself can master. Her independence evolves from necessity into a strength. She learns that even if she stumbles, the fall is hers, but so is the growth that follows. She discovers that control over her own choices is empowering. It gives her ownership of her future. Trusting her inner compass doesn't happen overnight. It is a journey often built from painful lessons. Maybe she once listened too much to others and found herself lost. Maybe she trusted the wrong voices and paid the price. So now she has learned to turn inward instead of outward. She has learned that validation can become a trap, one that keeps a person fixed in place, waiting for permission to move. She refuses to live like that anymore. She refuses to be held back by anyone else's fear or limitations. Her spirit wasn't designed to fit into someone else's expectations. It was designed to navigate her own destiny. So she steps boldly into choices that honor her growth and reject anything that threatens her peace. When she chooses without a crowd cheering or advising, she learns how to celebrate her own wins. She doesn't need someone to tell her she did well. She feels it. She knows it. That internal celebration is richer than applause because it comes from self-awareness and self-respect. She becomes loyal to her own potential. She becomes the one who encourages herself to keep going when no one else sees the value in her journey, and through that, she becomes unstoppable. Because when a woman's motivation comes from within, No external rejection can slow her down. This level of self-guided strength allows her to recognize who genuinely belongs in her life. Without the noise of many, she becomes more aware of the energy people bring. She can feel when someone aligns with her purpose and when someone is only there to distract her. She understands her worth too clearly to allow harmful influences close. She doesn't fear being alone, she fears losing herself by letting the wrong people in. So she chooses her circle slowly, intentionally, and wisely. Her solitude becomes the filter that protects her future. As she continues to trust her inner compass, she becomes more grounded, more decisive, and more stable. Her identity doesn't shift depending on who is around, because she has built a foundation that is rooted in authenticity. She knows what she stands for. She knows what she believes in. She knows what kind of life she wants. Her independence becomes not just a phase, but a permanent part of her power. She doesn't need others to tell her she is enough. She already knows. She doesn't need a group to validate her path. She is already walking in purpose. And one day, when people finally notice her greatness and gravitate toward her, she will welcome them, but not because she needs them. She will welcome them because she has built a life strong enough to stand with or without them. She will love by choice, not by necessity. She will connect out of abundance, not emptiness. She will walk confidently toward her destiny, guided not by others, but by the compass she learned to trust when she had no one else. When a woman has no friends, she experiences a kind of quiet isolation that can feel heavy at first, like the world has forgotten her or like she somehow doesn't belong anywhere. But in that silence, she is introduced to a priceless opportunity, the chance to build unshakable emotional strength. With no one else there to pick her up, she becomes the one who must wipe her own tears, calm her own fears, and motivate herself out of the darkest days. It's not a lesson she asked for, but it becomes one that transforms her. She learns that she can survive the very storms she once believed would destroy her. And when she survives what she thought she couldn't, she realizes that even when she feels alone, she is never truly defeated. Emotional strength starts forming the moment she chooses resilience over surrender. When life pushes her down, and there's no hand reaching out to help her stand again, she discovers the power of her own will. She gets up anyway. She pushes forward even when no one is cheering for her or offering reassurance. That internal bravery, that stubborn refusal to quit, grows her into a woman who knows how to fight for herself. Every setback that once seemed like the end becomes proof that she is stronger than she ever imagined. That inner toughness becomes a resource she can rely on for the rest of her life. A woman with no friends learns how to comfort herself without seeking approval or recognition. While others may depend on supportive words from their circle to feel valued, she learns the language of self-affirmation. She learns to tell herself, "I am worthy," even when no one else is speaking those words over her life. She learns to remind herself, "I am capable," even when the world doubts her ability. She learns to whisper, "I will make it," even when the present looks nothing like her dreams. Through every lonely victory and every quiet triumph, she develops a voice inside that builds her up rather than breaks her down. Her emotional strength also shows up in how she handles heartbreak and disappointment. Without a friend to immediately run to, she sits with her pain long enough to understand it. She doesn't get to distract herself or mask what she's feeling with constant company. She learns how to feel deeply without crumbling. She learns that strength is not pretending something didn't hurt. Strength is acknowledging the hurt, processing it, and still choosing to move forward. She becomes familiar with healing herself, forgiving herself, and encouraging herself. This emotional maturity turns her into a woman who can survive any season because she knows that every emotion she faces can be conquered. Over time, she learns that her emotions do not control her, she controls them. She stops reacting from insecurity or fear and begins responding from wisdom. She knows when to stay silent instead of arguing. She knows when to walk away instead of forcing her presence. She knows when to speak up instead of shrinking back. Emotional strength gives her balance and stability. She becomes steady, even when life is not, and that steadiness becomes something others eventually admire because it is rare and powerful. When she has no friends, she also learns the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness feels like a void, like something is missing, but solitude is full. It is a space where she learns, grows, and becomes more aligned with who she is supposed to be. She discovers that being alone doesn't mean she is unloved. It means she is being prepared. Prepared to handle blessings bigger than her current capacity. Prepared to lead instead of follow. Prepared to rise higher than the people who once overlooked her. Her emotional strength becomes the foundation for everything she will one day accomplish. And eventually, when people come into her life, whether they are friends, partners, or colleagues, she will not cling out of fear of being alone. She will not tolerate disrespect or betrayal just to avoid quiet nights. She will choose connections based on loyalty, trust, and genuine care. Because she no longer seeks people to fill her, she seeks people who align with her. And if someone walks away, she doesn't crumble. She doesn't question her worth. She knows that anyone who leaves simply wasn't meant to stay. A woman who has built emotional strength by standing alone becomes unbreakable. She doesn't bend every time life brings pressure. She doesn't fall apart every time someone disappoints her. She knows how to survive the silence. She knows how to find her way without guidance. She knows how to keep going when everything around her tells her to quit. Her strength was forged where no one could see it, in the nights she cried alone, in the decisions she made in fear, and in the battles she fought quietly. And that strength, invisible to many, becomes the very thing that shapes her into a woman who cannot be stopped by anything or anyone. When a woman has no friends, her journey forces her to develop a fierce independence that many people never learn. She becomes the kind of person who doesn't wait for others to make decisions for her, to guide her, or to provide validation for her choices. She learns how to trust her own instincts and build her own path, even when the world seems overwhelming. Instead of relying on a circle of support for every move she makes, she learns to rely on her own mind and strength. Independence becomes her default setting, not because she chose it at first, but because life didn't give her another option. Over time, she begins to appreciate that independence, because it shows her that she is capable of navigating life on her own terms. She becomes resourceful in a way that only solitude can teach. When she faces challenges, she doesn't immediately look around for help. She studies the situation. She experiments. She figures things out. She learns skills out of necessity, discovers solutions through trial and error, and pushes herself to handle tasks that others might delegate or avoid. That resourcefulness makes her adaptable. Whether the problem is emotional, practical, or spiritual, she knows how to handle it. She becomes someone who doesn't collapse under pressure, but grows stronger through it. Every step she takes alone reinforces the truth that she is enough to solve problems, enough to build a life, enough to overcome anything. Her independence also shapes her identity. Without a group around her influencing her decisions, she becomes deeply aware of who she truly is. Many people define themselves by their relationships, what others think, what others approve, what others expect. But a woman with no friends discovers herself outside of that noise. She learns what she likes, what she believes in, and what she wants her life to look like. She stops molding herself into someone else's version of acceptable. She learns to love her own company, to enjoy her own thoughts, and to appreciate her own presence. That kind of self-knowledge becomes power. It means no one can come into her life and tell her who she should be. She already knows. Independence teaches her responsibility in a deeply personal way. If she doesn't take care of herself, no one else will. So she learns how to handle her finances, maintain her space, protect her peace, and make decisions that prioritize her well-being. She notices her needs sooner because no one is there to remind her. She pays attention to her mental and physical health. She becomes the one who schedules, organizes, and manages her world. She learns discipline because her future depends on the choices she makes today. This responsibility doesn't weigh her down, it empowers her. She learns that she is not waiting for life to happen. She is building it intentionally. A woman who stands alone also learns how to move forward without permission. She doesn't wait for approval or a pat on the back. She doesn't hold herself back out of fear of judgment or rejection. She takes risks because she knows that even if she fails, she can recover. She doesn't need a cheerleader or a push. She becomes her own motivation. That independence strengthens her courage. She takes the next step, even when the path isn't clear. She learns to leap by faith instead of waiting for reassurance. Over time, she starts to see independence not as loneliness, but as freedom. Freedom to say no without guilt. Freedom to walk away from toxic people. Freedom to build a life that reflects her dreams instead of someone else's expectations. Freedom to make choices that serve her purpose. She doesn't feel the need to prove anything anymore. She is not desperate for attention or acceptance. She knows her value regardless of who acknowledges it. And yet, independence doesn't harden her, it refines her. It teaches her strength with softness. She becomes selective about who she allows into her life. But when she chooses someone, she chooses with love, loyalty, and intention. She isn't afraid of rejection or abandonment because she has already learned how to live without those who cannot stay. She doesn't cling, she welcomes. She doesn't beg, she invites. She doesn't settle, she chooses. Her independence becomes a shield and a crown, a shield that protects her from anything that tries to diminish her worth. A crown that reminds her that she walked through the hardest seasons alone and still rose. She becomes a woman who doesn't just survive without friends, she thrives. And when new relationships finally arrive, she doesn't need them to complete her. She is already whole. That is the power of a woman who learned to stand alone. A woman with no friends learns that her independence can become her greatest weapon. When there is no one to lean on, no one to validate her feelings, and no one to dictate her choices, she is forced to cultivate a resilience that is unmatched. This kind of strength does not come from comfort or constant support. It comes from the challenges she faces alone. Every time she overcomes a difficulty without assistance, she proves to herself that she is capable of more than she thought. Her independence becomes a tool she can wield with precision, a force that allows her to navigate life with clarity, confidence, and unshakable determination. The very circumstances that may feel like isolation actually train her to develop an inner power that is formidable and rare. Independence as a weapon means she is no longer vulnerable to the opinions or influence of others. She learns to make decisions without waiting for someone to give her permission, without seeking reassurance, and without fearing judgment. She becomes skilled at discerning what aligns with her goals and values, and she refuses to compromise her integrity for acceptance. This discernment sharpens her instincts, making her aware of who belongs in her life and who does not. She no longer tolerates toxicity, manipulation, or distractions because she has built the strength to stand firm in her truth. Her independence gives her authority over her own narrative, and that authority is a power no one can take away. With independence comes the ability to handle adversity without relying on external support. Challenges that might overwhelm others become opportunities for her to test her courage and resolve. She learns to face problems head-on without fear because she knows she is capable of finding solutions on her own. Her perseverance is amplified by the realization that she doesn't need anyone else to save her or make her path easier. Every obstacle she overcomes strengthens her, reinforces her resilience, and adds to the arsenal of skills and wisdom she has cultivated through self-reliance. Her independence transforms from a necessity into a strategic advantage that allows her to approach life with confidence and purpose. A woman with no friends also discovers the power of self-reliance emotionally. She becomes capable of managing her own feelings, comforting herself, and maintaining her mental and emotional balance without depending on others. She understands that her worth and happiness do not come from validation or attention. They come from her ability to nurture herself and stand firm in her value. This self-sufficiency allows her to remain composed in difficult situations, to respond with clarity instead of reacting out of fear or insecurity, and to protect her peace with intention. Emotional independence becomes a weapon in itself, giving her the strength to navigate relationships and life situations without being swayed by the opinions or actions of others. Her independence also empowers her to set boundaries decisively. She learns to say no to what doesn't serve her purpose, to walk away from situations that drain her energy, and to protect her time and resources fiercely. This ability to guard her life and her energy is a form of strength that people who rely too heavily on others rarely develop. Her independence becomes a filter, a shield that ensures she only invests in people, opportunities, and experiences that align with her goals. She learns that her solitude is not disadvantage, but a training ground for discernment and strategy. Independence allows her to become a leader in her own life. She makes decisions based on her vision and values, not the expectations of others. She develops confidence that radiates in her actions, her choices, and her presence. People begin to notice her strength, even if they don't understand the quiet work that went into building it. She commands respect because she walks with self-assurance, not because she seeks validation. Her independence gives her authority over her story, and that authority becomes her most effective tool in shaping the life she desires. She also realizes that her independence enables her to create opportunities rather than wait for them. She becomes proactive, solving problems creatively, taking initiative, and building pathways where none existed. Her ability to act without dependence on others makes her resourceful and unstoppable. The more she relies on herself, the more she understands that she is capable of achieving her goals alone. She cultivates a mindset of empowerment, seeing herself not as isolated, but as strategically positioned to grow stronger, rise higher, and claim what is rightfully hers. Ultimately, independence as a weapon is the culmination of resilience, self-reliance, emotional strength, discernment, and initiative. A woman who has learned to operate without friends or external support possesses a power that cannot be intimidated, shaken, or diminished. She knows her worth, she trusts her instincts, and she moves through life with purpose. Her independence equips her to face any challenge, embrace any opportunity, and rise above any circumstance. It becomes her advantage, her armor, and her weapon, the very thing that transforms solitude into strength and isolation into power. A woman with no friends learns that today's loneliness is not a punishment, but a training ground for tomorrow's leadership. When she is walking through life without a circle of support, she is forced to develop skills, resilience, and wisdom that many people never gain in the comfort of constant companionship. Leadership is not just about guiding others. It starts with mastering yourself. She learns how to manage her time, her emotions, and her energy without relying on others to keep her motivated. She learns how to make decisions with clarity and confidence, even when no one else is providing guidance or validation. The solitude she experiences becomes a crucible that shapes her into someone capable of carrying great responsibility and influence. Through isolation, she begins to understand the weight of accountability. When no one else is around to take responsibility for her choices or to shield her from the consequences, she must confront them herself. She becomes disciplined, organized, and intentional because she realizes that her actions directly affect her life, her goals, and her future. She learns the importance of preparation and foresight, recognizing that leadership is not improvised but built through consistent effort and self-mastery. Every challenge she faces alone teaches her how to strategize, prioritize, and act decisively, qualities that are essential for anyone who will lead others effectively. Emotional maturity is a critical component of leadership, and she develops it in solitude. She learns to regulate her feelings without relying on others to calm her down or reassure her. She discovers how to turn setbacks into lessons, how to maintain focus despite distractions, and how to find clarity amidst confusion. She becomes resilient because she has had to navigate storms without leaning on anyone else. This resilience is what allows leaders to stay steady when situations become difficult, to make tough decisions when emotions run high, and to inspire confidence in those around them. Her ability to remain composed and purposeful in isolation becomes a cornerstone of the leadership she will one day embody. A woman who has experienced being alone also learns to cultivate vision. Without external noise influencing her choices, she becomes attuned to her own goals, values, and purpose. She can see beyond immediate circumstances and focus on long-term outcomes. She begins to plan, set priorities, and take steps toward building the life she wants without waiting for guidance or approval. This vision allows her to anticipate challenges and opportunities, positioning herself not just to survive, but to thrive. Her independence allows her to take ownership of her direction, which is a fundamental trait of effective leadership. Decision-making becomes sharper through solitude. When she must rely solely on herself, she develops confidence in her judgment. She learns to trust her instincts, evaluate situations critically, and make choices that align with her values and goals. Mistakes become learning opportunities rather than sources of shame or discouragement. She understands that leadership requires accountability, and that those who can make decisions under pressure without dependence on others are the ones who can guide others successfully. Her experiences of making hard choices alone prepare her to take the helm with authority, wisdom, and courage. Loneliness also teaches her empathy and the value of genuine connections. When she eventually interacts with others in meaningful ways, she can lead with understanding, patience, and insight. She appreciates people for their true qualities rather than their proximity or convenience. She is selective in whom she trusts and surrounds herself with people who share her values, vision, and commitment. Leadership is not about popularity. It is about influence and guidance, and she learns that influence is earned through integrity, wisdom, and example, all of which are strengthened in solitude. Her leadership is forged in the quiet moments of self-discipline, perseverance, and personal growth. She learns to carry herself with dignity and self-respect, to handle pressure without crumbling, and to make choices that reflect her principles. She develops a sense of responsibility not just for herself, but for the impact she will have on others. A woman who has built herself in isolation understands that leading others is not about being in front of a crowd. It is about creating environments where people can thrive, making decisions that serve the greater good, and remaining steadfast when challenges arise. By the time she finds her community, she has already become a leader in her own right. She doesn't need to compete for recognition or approval. She walks into rooms with confidence, poise, and clarity, because she has earned it through her solitary growth. She can guide, mentor, and influence others not because she has always had followers, but because she has mastered herself first. The lessons of independence, accountability, emotional strength, decision-making, vision, and empathy equip her to lead in a way that is authentic, resilient, and transformative. Her period of loneliness was not a setback, it was preparation. Her leadership is the proof that even without friends, a woman can rise to a place of influence, impact, and purpose, ready to shape not just her own life, but the lives of others.